Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Love Below, Glimpse Collection by Jacinta Howard. Narrated by Wesleigh Siobhan and Jakobi Diem. Bam and Cassie. Cassie. He'd been down there for too long. I picked up my phone to confirm my suspicion and blinked in surprise when I saw the time. It was after 11. Bam had gone downstairs at 4. Normally, I don't bother him while he's in the studio working. Prototype is finishing up their second album, and after the success of Her and I, the pressure is on for them to avoid the dreaded sophomore slump. They took a year off from recording, period, trying to get their creative mojo back and get re-inspired to create. And when that inspiration came a few months ago, it came in like a hurricane. They were recording and vibing like they were possessed lately. It was amazing to watch, even crazier than when they'd been writing and making beats on that Sprinter van for their first album. That felt like forever ago. From the sounds of it so far, this album was even going to be better than the last one, which was a minor miracle because their debut was some of the best music that had been made in at least 20 years, and I could say that without bias. Tonight, I knew Bam wasn't working on the album at all, but on his own stuff. Well, kinda. Since the album blew up, he'd become one of the most sought-after producers in music. It wasn't just because his sound was dope. It was because his music felt almost malleable, like something you inhaled and blew out so that it could spread out and fill the rest of the room. It just made you feel deep in your soul, even if you didn't have the words to process why you were feeling that way. I smiled just thinking about him on the keys, making melody, how his eyes would get all focused, and he'd hold the corner of his bottom lip between his teeth as he molded his sound. Watching him play was still such a stimulant for me. It either relaxed me completely or get me all jazzed up and ready for whatever. Right now, he was stressed out, though, because he was producing most of the debut album for this new singer chick named Tara Rashawn that Jay Little had just signed a few months back, and he was over deadline. He was supposed to have a few beats to her already, and he was kind of struggling with coming up with something. She came over yesterday and they did some stuff, but I'm not sure if Bam was really feeling her creative energy, which is why he was downstairs now, working without her. My stomach rumbled, and I'd actually eaten earlier, so I knew he had to be starving. He'd gone down before I finished cooking and hadn't been upstairs since. I rolled my neck and leaned back on the couch for a second. We'd kept the same couch that we bought when we first moved to Atlanta, even though since then we'd bought our own place in College Park, not far from Jersey and Zay. The property was sprawling, I had to admit, bigger than we initially intended. But when we both saw the place, we knew it was our home. Right now it was feeling extra cozy. I smiled, staring at our Christmas tree, which I still hadn't taken down. The white lights were relaxing. I didn't know how Bam was going to feel about my Christmas decorating streak, since he didn't grow up celebrating holidays. But like with most things, he was zen about it when he came in and looked around. He even went as far to say the white lights I strung up on the mantel were nice, even though I had the feeling he was just indulging me and didn't care one way or the other. Finally, I sat up on the couch, repositioning the baby in my arms. "I gotta go check on your daddy," I told Journey, kissing both of her chubby cheeks. She looked up at me with her big round eyes at the sound of my voice, and my smile was automatic. I'd been quiet for a while, working on editing a video, while she contented herself with chewing on her stuffed penguin, happy as long as someone was holding her instead of making her go to sleep. "Yes, Daddy," I smiled when she made her da-da da noise, already trying to repeat after me. I pushed my laptop away and stood her up on my thighs so that I could kiss both of her cheeks again, while she attempted to balance herself on my lap in her purple-footed pajamas. I know it's probably vain, but she seriously has to be one of the cutest inventions ever. Sometimes it's almost like I didn't even make her, and I'm observing her adorableness like a stranger. Jet black thick curls, 2 valley-sized dimples in her fat cheeks, creamy chocolate skin, and an infectious, lazy smile like a dad's, like she has secrets no one else knows about. I stopped kissing on her cheeks and stood, stretching before I bent to put her and her bouncer on the floor. I got her strapped in as she started batting at the dangling toys above her head with her fat little hand. She blinked up at me, totally awake, and said something in her 9-month-old jabber before she flashed her dimples at me, like she was trying to charm me from putting her to bed. "You're about to take your little happy self to sleep," I warned her, which only made her kick her feet and babble louder. I shook my head, still smiling because she was such a chill baby, and I was grateful for that. I rounded the corner from the living room to the kitchen, where I warmed Bam up some of the pasta I'd made earlier. When it finished, filling the room with the smell of garlic and tomatoes, I made my way down the hall, stopping at the door that led downstairs to the studio. I pulled it open just as Bam came through the door and almost rammed into me with his big body. He caught me just before I toppled over. "The hell you up here doing, Cupcake?" he asked, his brow wrinkled, a half grin on his face when he grabbed my waist. "I was coming to feed you," I told him, as he physically lifted me out of his way, with one arm wrapped around my waist, as he took a bite of the apple he was holding with his free hand. I grabbed onto his biceps for stability, used to being manhandled by him. "Feed me what?" he asked as he chewed, letting me slide down the front of his firm chest to the hardwood floor. He was wearing a t-shirt and sweats, and I felt his hardness between us. He wiggled his eyebrows comically, and I smirked, focused on his lips. Bam had to have the sexiest mouth known to man. His grin widened when he caught me lusting, and he stepped closer, until my back bumped against the wall. His eyes were low when he ran his hand from my waist to the front of my belly, flicking a finger against my belly ring, before dipping lower, cupping me through my cotton shorts. "What you want to feed me, baby doll?" I couldn't stop myself from arching into his hand, just a little, as he bit the corner of his lip, still smiling when he raised the brow. "Some actual food, Bam?" I managed. "You haven't eaten anything real since this morning." He held up his apple and grinned at me. "I said anything real. Aren't you hungry?" On cue, his stomach grumbled, and I smiled triumphantly. "See how well I know you?" He nodded and smiled, pressing closer still and kissing my mouth, his lips cool from the apple. I pressed up into the kiss anyway, even though his mouth was full and he was still kind of chewing, pecking his bottom lip, then his chin as he smiled. He swallowed and finally moved his hands from me, smacking my ass as I led the way into the kitchen. "How's it going down there?" I asked, as we headed into the spacious kitchen. It was one of my favorite parts of the house, maybe because this is where we spent the most time. I pulled a pepper and had the wall painted a soft yellow, which went well with dark cherry wood. Mostly, it just made the space feel permanently sunny. His plate was on the counter and he grabbed it, immediately diving in just like I thought. I'm about finished," he answered before he swallowed. "Are you done for the night?" He nodded, then over the back of his neck. He looked tired. His beard was scruffy and his eyes were heavy and a little red-rimmed. Ain't nothing else coming, so it's a wrap for now. Because her energy is kinda off, right? He shrugged, still focused on his food. She's thirsty, I said. He frowned a little and looked up at me. Nah, not thirsty. Maybe searching, I amended, and he nodded in agreement. I studied him for a minute, watching him shovel food in his mouth. I think she has a crush on you. He grinned and shrugged again, still chewing. And Zay, I said, making him nod again. Yeah, she's into that dude, he said, smirking a little, his eyes serious when he looked at me. She better chill before someone has to get her together. She don't want it with Jersey, Bam said. Or me, I tacked on. She needs to keep her eyeballs in check. Bam chuckled, eyeing me. Ain't nobody thinking about that girl. But that's how it happens. You're not thinking about her until you are. He took another bite of his pasta as I leaned against the counter opposite him, grabbing the huge liter of water I'd been fighting to finish for the past couple of hours. You get that video done yet? He asked. I shook my head and rolled my eyes, exhausted just thinking about it. I was working on a promotional video for Xavier from Black Bottom's solo project, and he was nitpicky as hell. Well, his team was nitpicky as hell. Jay Little wasn't involved in his solo project, and the people he'd surrounded himself were extra corny. Told you not to do nothing for him, or anyone else for that matter. You were supposed to be cooling out with work for a minute. I know, but your ass is hard-headed. He finished for me, taking another bite of food as he leaned against the counter opposite of me. Shut up, I said, rolling my eyes, taking a sip of water. The money was good. It ain't about the money. That was the thing we talked about a lot. Once checks started rolling in from Prototype's endorsement and album sales, why we did what we did. What was our real motivation and inspiration? We were good financially. We both had a head for money management and had made smart investments. We weren't on Carter status or anything remotely close to it. We still needed to bring in checks, but we weren't hurting at all. Plus, we didn't go crazy with spending, because showing off with material stuff was just cornball shit to both of us. We just wanted to keep putting good energy into the world while we were here, use the gifts that God gave us. I loved those kinds of conversations with Bam. Those were the talks that made me fall even deeper in love with him, because he was so real, so present with me. I feel like I'm doing something challenging, I said. He tilted his head, the look in his eyes saying he wasn't buying it. Nah, you feel like you're doing something that's easy for you because you're afraid to work on that short. I'd written a script for a short about a teen girl battling with depression that I was hesitating about shooting. Maybe because it was so personal to me, given my own history with depression and anxiety. Bam had read me right. I was afraid. I had connections now, enough to make something happen for myself. And in some ways, that was even scarier than not having support because it meant I had to produce something dope because everyone's eyes would be on me. If I failed, it happened publicly. That was definitely freaking me out. I keep telling you to trust yourself, Bam said, reading my mind, scrolling through his phone as he ate. Trust the talent God gave you. I shrugged and sighed, though he missed it because he was still studying his phone. I'll be done with X in the next week or so, I said, changing the subject. 2 days. You need to be done by the day after tomorrow because we're shutting everything down when we leave town. No laptops, no cameras, no nothing. He looked up at me with that serious look of his that turned me on, and also irked me because it was so final and unwavering. Jay has that party thing tomorrow night. Don't forget. Cassandra, he warned again. We're shutting everything down day after tomorrow. Stop being so dang bossy, man. I told you I don't enjoy that.
Bullshit,
he countered, awareness in his deep voice as a grin traced his lips.
You absolutely enjoy it.
He stared at me as he chewed, daring me to deny him, knowing I wouldn't. I'm bringing my camera, I said, ignoring the way my body responded to his voice and the hungry way he was looking at me. We were headed to my Grandma Pepper's for a while, and we were taking a full 3 weeks off from everything. He raised a brow, giving me his eye warning look, and I rolled my eyes, following him out of the kitchen when he finished with his plate and put it in the sink. He shook his head as soon as he entered the living room and spotted Journey. He glanced back at me.
Her little ass is still up.
She went to sleep for about 3 hours and woke back up like it was a whole new day. He shook his head again and smirked when he walked over to her bouncer and unstrapped her. Her legs were kicking double time at the sight of her daddy, and she immediately reached for him, starting to fake cry for his attention, because she liked for him to cuddle and hold her all night.
None of that.
He chided her gently in his deep voice.
You weren't crying 2 seconds ago. Don't start it up now.
He was holding her by her belly like she was a football, his large hands practically covering her entire body, as he pretended to bench press her, raising her high in the air above his head, then bringing her back down to kiss her slobbery mouth. It scared me when he handled her like that, although he ignored my warnings that he was going to drop her. She reached for his beard, and he pretended to eat each of her fingers as she squealed in delight.
Now, which one are you?
He asked, pretending to study her little features, squinting his eyes and tilting her from side to side like a rag doll, making her laugh. Bam! I told you to stop asking them that, I said, laughing as I seated myself on the arm of the couch. You're gonna give them a complex or something, making them think you can't tell them apart.
You have identity issues, Cake Pop?
He asked her, waiting for her to speak with his brow raised. She replied in her baby speak. I obviously didn't understand what she was saying, but it was definitely something. He laughed and glanced over at me before kissing her dimples. Cake Pop and Lollipop, or Journey and Trinity, if you asked anyone else. Twins ran in my family. Although they were the first identical set in generations, you would have thought Bam hit the lottery when he found out I was having twins, kept calling them a twofer. Journey was our bouncy, happy baby. Trinity was calm and super chill, watchful. She kind of reminded me of my sister Kennedy that way. Trinity also enjoyed her sleep. I glanced at the monitor sitting on the end table and saw that she was still zonked out, oblivious to her sister's night owl antics. Right now, she was having a full-on conversation with Bam.
I know. That's what I told your mommy, too.
Bam agreed with her, as I shook my head and yawned. He grinned at me again, and I felt my stomach tingle a little. The way Bam affected me, still, was a revelation. He made me smile every single day. He made me feel real and present.
Aye, little buddy. It's time for you to beat it,
he said, putting her on his shoulder as he headed toward the twins' bedroom to put her down.
Me and Mommy got some business to handle.
I laughed and shook my head as I yawned again.
For real, baby doll,
he said, meeting my eyes.
It's only going to take a minute for me to put her down. Come to bed with me.
His voice had dropped an octave, and goosebumps coated my body. Okay.
Bam. It took her stubborn ass another hour and a half to come to bed. Just like I thought she would, Journey fell asleep after I rocked her for about 3 minutes. She was in her crib, knocked out, comfortable in that dead-to-the-world baby sleep. I'd watched my daughter sleep for a few minutes, still tripping that they were mine. My family had finally come together in a way I couldn't even imagine before I met Cass. Cassandra, Trinity, and Journey. They were my heartbeats. Journey, I told Cass when she'd asked me about names. She was about 6 months by then, and the babies were getting more active, moving around in her belly like they were trying to go somewhere, or were figuring out their limbs. "What's it mean exactly?" she'd asked, pulling out her phone to search the meaning, because she's borderline obsessed with names. "A trip or experience," she'd read, smiling at me. "I can dig it." "Okay, and I was thinking Trinity for the other name," she offered. "As in 3? She nodded. "As in, it took me 3 days to fall in love with you." I shook my head, smirking. "It took you longer than that, Cupcake, if my memory serves me correctly." "No, it didn't," she said, her eyes serious. "It took me longer than that to acknowledge it, and for it to grow, and for me to properly express it. But I fell in love with you during that very first trip to Atlanta. So yeah, 3. What could I say to that? I looked up from the deep-sea documentary I was half watching when she yawned and finally shuffled into our dimly lit bedroom, pulling her hair out of its band and wrapping it into a ball at the top of her head again as she made her way to her bathroom. I heard water running, and a few long minutes later she emerged, her face clear and clean, and headed into our closet, which was almost the size of my old bedroom back in Tyler. "Baby, did you see your t-shirts? I put them in here on the shelf after I washed them," she called out, her voice muffled from inside the closet. "Yup. Thank you," I answered, when she poked her head around the doorframe half naked to see if I'd heard her. "I don't know what happened to your blue Miles Davis t-shirt. Do you?" she asked, her brow knitted as she glanced toward the bed, where some of our clothes were still in laundry baskets. "Why are you trying to put on clothes when I'm getting ready to take them right back off anyway?" She looked up at me and smirked cutely, showing one dimple. She was so damn pretty. I just wanted to bury myself in her, work out some of the energy buzzing in me, because Cass took me there, to that place where nothing else mattered except her. I scratched my head, watching her piddle around in the closet, trying to be patient. I was wound tight. Working on Tara's music was wearing me out. Shit was stressful, to be real, because I needed to get it done even though something was off with us musically. I was having a hard time figuring out what, and that was frustrating. And then working on Prototype's album meant we were going non-stop. Plus, we'd just gotten off the road 2 weeks ago, and it took time to catch up with everything since we were still so busy. That's part of the reason I didn't really want Cass bothering with Xavier's dumbass. She was tired, dealing with the babies, who she'd only weaned a few weeks ago, being on the road with us, taking care of the house. It was a lot, and that wasn't lost on me. But that was her nature. She was caretaker to the core, sacrificing herself without even realizing she was doing it. But even though I wanted her to take care of herself, I was proud. Cass was dope as shit, poised to be on everybody's next breakout director list if she ever let go of her hang-ups about her talent. Her vision was sharp and rooted in real perception, and she was smart. She paid attention to details other people wouldn't see, all things that made her work have a unique spark. I understood her fear. When you're working with something like that, that's so left of what the masses are used to, you start to wonder if you're crazy. People flock to what's easy to digest. If you make them think or go outside of the boxes they were used to, a lot of times it takes a minute for them to catch up, which can wear on your self-confidence. And that's one thing you gotta have as a creative: confidence. I let my gaze travel over her, down between her breasts to her belly, which only had a little pouch, even though she'd given birth less than a year ago. The little birth weight she'd picked up was already gone, though. She was glad about it, but I liked it on her. "I'm breastfeeding, Bam," she'd explained when I'd grabbed a handful of her ass one night and wondered aloud where it all went. Then she punched me in the shoulder and rolled away from me. I pulled her back to my chest, laughing, even while she glared at me, then took my time, showing her exactly how much I liked her little ass. I let my gaze drop to her hips, which definitely didn't shrink from breastfeeding. They were fuller in the way grown women's were. And her teddies. I bit down on my lower lip, my gaze lingering there before I looked up at her face. She wasn't paying me any attention because she was busy twisting the prototype necklace she always wore around her neck. "This thing is so annoying," she muttered. "It's always twisted and getting all knotted up." "I told you not to get a chain that thin." "Yeah, but it was prettier," she said, looking up at me with those hypnotic eyes of hers. She was frowning a little, and her dimples were showing. "Cassandra." "What?" "You trying to torture me? Come your ass on, baby." She raised her brows and laughed in surprise, the sound light and sweet. "Seriously?" "Hell yes, seriously," I said, letting the sheets fall over my erection. "Look at how you got me right now." She rolled her eyes, still smiling. "Come on and handle this," I teased her, deliberately dropping my voice because I knew when I did that, it got her riled up. She bit her lower lip, still grinning, though her eyes had darkened. I needed her tonight. It had been over a week, which was long for us, even after the babies. We just weren't one of the couples who thrived without being physical with each other. I needed to feel her. That other shit was just, nah, not for us. And that after twin sex, it was phenomenal. I mean, we always had otherworldly sex. From the very beginning, we just connected. But knowing I was with the mother of babies, my wife, that just took it to the next level for me. I could never get enough of her. She flicked off the closet light and finally crossed the room to our king-sized bed, wearing nothing but her cotton panties. I watched her breasts bounce with her movements. Her nipples were more like dark chocolate kisses than milk chocolate now. She climbed into bed, and I immediately pulled her close, dropping her beneath me when I rolled on top of her, inhaling her almond scent. Her legs fell open, her body immediately softening when I situated myself between her legs, already poking at her entrance. "Damn, homie," she said, when I pulled at her panties, rolling them down her hips. "Can I get all the way in the bed first?" she teased, smiling up at me. "Nah, you took all that time playing around and carrying on," I said, dipping my head and pressing kisses into her neck as she peeled her underwear all the way off. "You gotta do all the work tonight. I don't have any energy," she teased, already a little breathless, as she ran her fingers over the back of my neck, making chill bumps form on my arms. "You really too sleepy for me?" I asked, tracing my tongue down the column of her neck. "I didn't say all that," she murmured, before she turned her head, catching my lips, opening her mouth, and letting her tongue dart against mine. She tasted like mint and herself, and she tangled her tongue with mine, raising her head off the pillow to deepen the kiss. For a few long seconds, we only kissed. It was still one of my favorite things to do with Cass. Her lips were one of my favorite things about her. The noises she made, her tiny little puffs of breath, made me feel high. She slid her hand between us, stroking me as she tried to guide me inside her. But I wouldn't let her, kissing my way down her neck to collarbone, sucking her warm skin, before dipping lower.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?